Hi there, I'm Eddie O'Donnell here at Tools for Working Wood, and today we've got a bit of a project on our hands. As you can tell, I've been trying to gussy the place up a little bit. Cabinet over here, shelves over here, trying to cover up that plain cinder block wall that's been sitting behind me this whole time. Also trying to warm the place up a little bit. You know, it's a little dreary with just the white cinder block behind me, a little bit of a small space, trying to make the place feel a little bit less like a jail cell. You know, because it's not a jail cell. So today we'll be finishing with the wood wax finish. I think this is a really great candidate for this kind of shelving. The finish itself is a really nice finish. Tactily, it's very soft. It has a texture that most people probably wouldn't be familiar with from most standard finishes. And there's a couple of really nice things that you can accomplish with it, and the biggest thing that's most notable about the wood wax finish is that it does come in a range of colors. Now, the reason I like it for shelves is it's not as protective as the Pollox. So whereas you might want to use that on something that you're touching, things are moving around on, that you're banging up against all day, like a dining table or other sort of surfaces like that, this is really good for the more inanimate surfaces, shelves that are for display, things that aren't really going to get bumped and knocked around as much just because it doesn't have that same amount of protection. One of the really nice things though is because it does come in a range of colors and because the Osmo family of finishes likes to work together, you can absolutely mix this with the Pollox or apply a coat of this and then the Pollox on top of it to regain that protection. But you begin to lose that textural feel that I believe is unique to the wood wax finish, that soft, silky luster that it does have in, you know, the tactile nature. So we're going to be doing a couple of applications here to go over a couple of things that you can do. First thing is I've got this stack of shelves which are going to go behind me over here, and for these guys I picked lightly steamed beech as the color that we're going to put on here. And the reason is a lot of people really like that sort of lighter plain look. This is more of the kind of color that's going to help accentuate a certain visual style, keeping the boards light, relatively white. A lot of people really like that nowadays. This guy is just a little shelf that's going to be going in this cabinet right here. And with this guy, I figured we could do something a little bit more drastic, really change that color. We're going with something that I think is really popular as well, which is we're going to go with a walnut color on this. And we're going to show you how drastic and how much of an effect it has. Both of these are pine. They've been sanded up to 220. And let's jump right into it. Here. So get a good amount on our rag here. And we're just gonna make sure that we're applying things thinly. As you can see, there is a little bit of change with the shelving color, but not that much. All right, so it's been a tick since I applied this. I laid my old rag out flat so that it could dry out. I've got a fresh one here, and now we're going to wipe away any excess from here to begin to reduce some of that that color change there. So just get it nice and wide. And we're going to wipe away, and we want to make sure we do this in the direction of the grain. As you can see, it's beginning to show the grain lines a little bit more. Not a huge amount of change. Again, this is a particularly sort of light formulation in terms of the color that we went with. But it does begin to reveal some of these darker lines a little bit more, the places that didn't soak up that color as much, giving this a much more muted effect. It also has the advantage of helping burnish this finish in a little bit. When we go to our next application, we'll be using the whitepad, and that will really burnish the finish in. Just working in little circles like I normally do with the whitepad. As I'm applying, I just want to make sure that I'm not leaving a huge amount on the surface. Looking for some of those swirl marks to go away as I do those circles with the pad here. It's just been about enough time for me to go over it with a fresh white pad to buff it in. Trying to keep an eye on that surface, make sure it's looking nice and consistent. Trying to get every little spot, double checking to make sure that it looks like there's nothing left over on the surface. All right, this guy looks ready to go. Nice, flat, consistent. Doesn't look like there's any left over. All right, now I got 3 more to do, and then after that we can let these guys rest for 8 to 10 hours, and our shells will pretty much be done. So I've got my well-mixed Osmo here. This is a pretty familiar application. This is the same thing we did for the Pollux video, and it's one of those methods that works with a lot of the Osmo products, and it's kind of the tried and true method to go for, in my opinion at least. I find it leaves the nicest surface. So we're gonna let this guy dry, give it 8 to 10 hours, and we'll do a second coat. All right, so now we're gonna take a look at applying the wood wax finish with this walnut stand on the back side of this, using the Rotex and a white pad. Once again, this is a sort of familiar application method. I used it in the top oil video. And like I was saying, these applications for Osmo are pretty universal. A lot of the application methods are going to span the different products that they have and work really well. To me, using the white pad seems to be the one thing that yields incredible results almost every time. So I'm very happy to stick with that as my main form of application, whether it's by hand or with the rotary method. So let's take a look. I got the Rotex set to the lowest speed, white pad on there, and we're just gonna pour on a small amount of finish to buff in. You don't want to put too much down just so you don't spray it everywhere. So here you can definitely see I poured out a little extra, but it's definitely too much. You can see it's pulled everywhere, and as I'm using the sander, it's spraying everywhere. So I'm just gonna clean up a little bit before I keep away some of that excess. So one of the things I was looking for when I was using the Rotex to apply was no swirl marks showing up as I move the sander around. And now I'm looking essentially for the same thing. But there are no marks appearing as I move this around, and everything looks consistent. Alright, so now we're back with our walnut colored board here. We're going to be putting our second coat of the walnut finish on there to deepen some of that color and give it that extra layer of protection. This will be more drastic than the change that we saw, the very slight change that we saw with the shelves behind me because of how light that color was and how light that effect is. In this particular case, we're going to be seeing a more drastic change. I'm going to do this with the white pad once again. I'll do both sides by hand with the white pad, but I want you to know what I'm doing with the white pad. If I was doing it with the Rotex, I'd be looking for kind of the same things. I'd be looking for consistent color everywhere, and particularly with the Rotex, as you're applying, you want to apply and wait till you don't see any swirl marks. So let's jump right to it. Pour a little bit of finish out here. And we're going to work our circles into this surface. Now the version of this that is probably the most drastic are the intensive colors that they have, where the first coat will give you a sort of washed block color, something like a standard fire truck red or something like that, and then the second coat will make that color very, very solid, still revealing a little bit of the grain though. In this case, this is more of a consistency thing. We're going to make this board a little more uniformly the color that we applied. All right, I'll leave this attack up for 15 minutes. I'll buff it down with the white pad, I'll do the other side, and then we'll take a look at it. The thing I like most about this step is the way that the pad, with the texture that it has, really helps the finish sink in, and it leaves a really, really nice texture on the board. All right, and I have let these folks dry. This guy, I'm very happy that I can put him in the cabinet right now, and this guy has been on the shelf for a little while now, so I'm happy I can start putting stuff on top of him and making this space look a little bit more welcoming than Cinderblock Dungeon. I'm very happy with the texture that both of these have as well. This is the thing that I like most about the wood wax finish, is the incredibly soft texture that it has. Something that I really, really like, and it's something that the use of the white pad really helps with. As you can tell, I'm definitely a fan of the white pad for all methods of applying Osmo. With this particularly, because of that tactile nature and because of the softness that it leaves on the board, I'm even more happy to use it. One of the lovely things about Osmo, as is always the case with Osmo products, is that it's super low VOC. I didn't have to worry about ventilation. I wore gloves, but I certainly didn't need to wear gloves. Mostly I wore gloves so I didn't get stuff all over my clothes and all that, which you may want to do as well. It's a really nice product to work with, knowing that once I put it on, I'm not going to be smelling those fumes for a really long time, and that if I'm sharing the space with anyone, as I do here, they're not going to be smelling those fumes either. They're not going to be taking in anything dangerous. Now, one catch and one thing I will always talk about with Osmo products is the flammability of the rags. If you use a rag or even a white pad, you gotta let those things dry. Don't just chuck them in the trash. For the rags, hang them up on a clothesline, or I've got them hanging on a metal pole over here. Lay them out flat on a non-flammable surface. You want to make sure that they don't get crumpled up. Give them a chance to spontaneously combust, which is a problem with oil-based finishes like Osmo. So please, guys, be safe, finish safe. Make sure that you're disposing of your rags safely. Same thing goes for the white pad. It's a little bit less dangerous, but should still err on the side of caution. All right, so I'm very happy now. I'm gonna put these guys up.